Peace, everybody. Welcome to Randomly Selected, powered by the Silver Room. My name is Mario. Thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. Make sure you tell all your people, man. Subscribe. This is what we're on. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Today's program is a special one as we welcome in journalist and playwright Natalie Moore to the show. We talk about her origin story, we ask about her recent trip to Finland and the prison system there in comparison to the prison system here in the United States, and we ask her in real time about where her head is at revolving around the recent ruling or anticipated ruling by the Supreme Court regarding Roe v. Wade. It's Randomly Selected with Natalie Moore.
I am a granddaughter of the Great Migration. My parents are from Chicago. My grandparents came from Georgia and Tennessee and Springfield, Illinois. And I grew up in Chatham. Public school, graduate.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Morgan Park for high school.
Okay.
I went to Sutherland for elementary school.
Okay.
Grew up in Chatham. And wanted to be a writer and a journalist at a very young age. Mm-hmm. In part because I didn't think that Black communities in Chicago were covered fairly. And I thought, well, I like to write, I like to read. Well, maybe I should try journalism.
Yeah. And that took you to Israel eventually.
It took me a lot of places. I was editor of my high school newspaper. I did summer programs every year related to journalism. And then I went to Howard University, majored in journalism. Went to Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism and got a master's in newspaper management. Worked at the Detroit News, St. Paul Pioneer Press. I did do a fellowship with Associated Press in Israel. At BZ, I've been lucky to do some travel. Finland last year to look at the open prison system.
Yeah. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
For BZ and for you to go to Finland. I don't want to jump back and forth. But the Finland experience related to the prison system here in America, what did you discover the similarities and the major differences were?
There are no similarities. I could talk all day about the differences. I got a fellowship through the Pulitzer Center, and the reason why I wanted to go is, criminal justice reform and abolitionist work is, really centered in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And even though abolitionists wouldn't consider open prisons abolition, Finland has such a system that it's nowhere near as egregious as the American prison system. And people say, well, Finland's so small, and why would you go there? The United States is so big and so diverse. Finland's the size of Cook County population-wise, 5.5 million. So I still think that with radical imagination, you can look at different systems and think, well, what can we learn? What can we do better? Yeah. And the open prison system there means, no cages, no uniforms. You get to leave to go to work or to go to school. You have a social worker, you have mental health. And one of the criticisms is that they need more mental health, but their mental health is way more than what we offer. And I would say the major thing that I learned is policymakers are guided by, and politicians are guided by research and policy. And so they realize that just locking people up doesn't work. It doesn't deter crime. Mm-hmm. And the research says this is one of the things that you need to do.
Did that blow your mind, knowing what goes on here in America and then seeing that system of I don't want to call it prison reform, but seeing that be played out in that way where there are no cages, the prisoners are able to go back and forth. Did that mess you up when you came back here?
I would say what messed me up when I came back here, and it still messes me up, is the level of trust that people have in government. I could have done that series on public education. Mm-hmm. There are no private schools there. There's no neighborhood. It's just a different system. I could have done it on healthcare. I just happened to choose prisons. Yeah. And people trust the government to do the right things to make their lives easier, less hassle, to be equitable. And the reentry has still been rough for me because I don't know if we'll ever. I think it's something to aspire to, but that's not where we are.
You talk about trusting government. We are still in the wake of the draft opinion of the Supreme Court regarding Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey. Where are you in the midst of this moment, and understanding that those decisions of men and governments to have dominion over a woman's body is ridiculous on its face, and that every human being should have the right to choose whatever it is that they choose to do with their bodies. Having heard the reaction to the draft opinion and having heard the reaction of government and politicians to that, where are you at on all of this?
I have been saying when Roe v. Wade is struck down, not if, because that seemed to be the writing on the wall. Of course, when that draft opinion came out, it was shocking because, one, a draft opinion's never been leaked. Secondly, the language in there was very forceful, saying that Roe should have never happened, using the word egregious, and likening Roe to Plessy versus Ferguson.
Which I think went over a lot of people's heads. That didn't get talked about.
I haven't heard that talked about.
Yeah.
So I was tweeting about that on Monday night. So basically saying, well, we used to have segregation in this country, and the Supreme Court upheld it, and then Brown versus Board of Education struck that down. So that's what this is. And there was also language about sodomy. I don't think that people are being alarmist when they say what could happen next, whether that's same-sex marriage, whether that's contraception, or other things that one would think would be a right to privacy. And so what I'm doing in this moment is what journalists or artists or thinkers do, creating something. Now, this was already created. I could not have imagined this timing. In 2018, I started working on a play called The Billboard. And it is published as a book as of March by Haymarket Press. And it will be a play produced by 16th Street Theater, but staged at Northwestern's downtown campus theater, June 23rd through July 17th.
Nice plug. There you go.
There's my plug.
There you go.
Check it out. And, when we leave here, I'm going to make sure the Silver Room has stock copies of the Billboard. They've had other books of mine, and they run out at the South Side.
Absolutely.
So the premise of the play is based on things that have happened, and it's me pulling from my reporting. So around the country, there have been anti-abortion billboards targeting Black women that have gone up. And this happened in Chicago in 2011, but in this play, it's set in 2018, in the fall before the 2019 municipal race. And a Black man running for city council, because in Chicago, I had to throw a city council. I had to throw in politics.
Of course.
He puts up a billboard that says, "The most dangerous place for a Black child is his mother's womb. Keep Inglewood Black. Vote Demetrius Drew for city council." There's a fictitious Black women medical clinic that's in the neighborhood. And they put up their own billboard that says, "Abortion is self-care, #trust Black women." And a version of that billboard happened in Dallas in 2018. The same guy who was in Chicago in 2011 was in Dallas and did a similar anti-Black woman, anti-abortion billboard. And the Afia Center put up its own billboard saying, "Self-care, trust Black women." And that billboard became more controversial than the anti-abortion billboard because people had not thought about abortion as self-care.
Right.
And in the play, the medical director and executive director of this clinic is from Inglewood, just like her name is Tanya Gray, just as Demetrius Drew is from Inglewood. And then there's an incumbent city council member who's in it and a couple of other characters. But the subtext, too, is who gets to speak for community, who belongs to Inglewood. And here is a candidate who is rightly pointing out disinvestment in the neighborhood, but he's laying it at the feet of Black women, saying your abortions are causing population loss, which, of course, is not the case.
Right. I'm excited to see this. The playwright you, it fascinates me because I know about the writer you know what I mean, and the journalist you, but the playwright you get a chance to kind of expand your thought. I think that's really cool.
And it was a seamless transition.
Yeah.
Writing audio scripts for BEZ feature stories, there are a lot of similarities in writing a play script. Even in NPR training book, it'll say things like, think of your scripts as a 3-act play, or like a playwright, you're writing for the ear. So in our stories, the best thing someone says may not be the best way that they said it. You're writing for the ear constantly. And I would also say that there is more of an urgency in playwright or immediacy. The urgency now with this ruling coming, I did not predict that. But you don't, I mean, plays are not, they don't have to be short, but you still are dealing with limited time.
Yeah.
More limiting than if you were writing, let's say, a novel. So there's an immediacy that's there, just as there is in an audio script.
This portion of the program, we talk about her time at WBEZ, Chicago's public radio station, and the recent partnership that WBEZ took on with the Chicago Sun-Times. And we talk about the jewel that is the South Side of Chicago. Here's more with Natalie on Randomly Selected.
I think it's really exciting, and nothing like this has been done. I mean, there have been partnerships of various degrees, but this is huge on the national journalism scene. It's still early, so, what we've seen now are some BEZ print stories that would have been in digital that are going inside the paper. People might have heard sometimes reporters on our airs, not doing reporting, but doing reporter debriefs with an anchor. So we're still trying to figure out, well, I'm not high up, but I would say that it's still in the exploratory phase to figure out what this partnership will look like. But the reason why I'm excited about it is people can say, oh, people don't read newspapers. Well, that's not true. We don't have, 5 newspapers like we once did, but it's a legacy newspaper. And it reaches Black and brown communities in a way that we don't. And it's not that BEZ doesn't try, but people do get locked into their news habits. And a lot of the work even my race, class, and communities team does could benefit. Like the people who need to read or listen to our journalism, we are not reaching. And then on the other hand, there's an audience that there's not a ton of overlap between both audiences. Yeah. And so I think there are lots of opportunities for collaborations and also saving journalism.
Do you think that this will help save the Sun-Times? Because we see a lot of newspapers folding around the country, particularly, although the Sun-Times is not a Black-owned newspaper, Black journalists working for papers like The Defender, and I can name papers all over the country that are Black-owned that no longer exist. This saves the Sun-Times, you think?
Yes, for sure.
That's a good thing. That's absolutely a good thing. And now, so we covered those things. I am fascinated by your eye when it comes to the South Side of Chicago. The South Side has been mystified, vilified, all kinds of fides. Talk to me about, because I know how I feel about the South Side of Chicago. Talk to me about the South Side from your perspective.
Well, we have similar feelings, similar fondness, similar wanting to defend it. I see your Facebook posts going off on people, rightly so, who are complaining about paying for something that's a service, or complaining about maybe, not really understanding violence. So, we have our problems, but there's also a lot of joy. And I think it takes, when other people come here to visit, after someone told them, oh, you're going to get shot.
Right.
I was just talking to a friend yesterday, and she was like, there's just she lives in D.C. She's like, there's just no, like, Black Chicago. What is it? I mean, we are the capital of Black America. People like to say some other cities, but it's just not true.
Not at all.
And we were having this conversation about Carter G. Woodson. Like, we were talking about libraries.
Right.
And she had never heard of the Vivian Harsh collection, which is, I was like, well, it's like the Schomburg of the Midwest. That's not really the best example, but this is where so many archives are. I've seen letters from Langston Hughes or Neil Hurston, but I was there yesterday. Well, I was at the story that I was telling, it's a library that we go to. I take my 6-year-old there to check out books, but the Vivian Harsh collection has, they do exhibits based on their archives. So they have a new one of Toni Bond. And I have a Q&A with Toni Bond in the Billboard.
Right.
She's a Black woman, theologian, reproductive justice advocate, and she used to run the Chicago Abortion Fund in Chicago. And in 1994, she was part of a group of 12 Black women who coined the term reproductive justice. And that term is broader than pro-choice. So to break it down, it means the right to have a child, the right not to have a child, the right to parent the way you want to with support, and the right to sexual pleasure. And so
Did you hear that bell go off? That's just like on It's a Wonderful Life.
Every time you say sexual pleasure,
the bell rings.
The bell rings.
That's the...
but her,
the new thing.
Yeah, but her work also, was breast cancer screening, getting people to know their bodies, and which all breaks down to comprehensive health care, that it's not just about the right to have an abortion or the choice, but how do all these other systems play together, and making sure that there's an equitable healthcare system. So my friend was like, oh, they did there's an exhibit about this from the archives, and I've brought her to the Silver Room.
Yeah.
You don't really have Black spaces like that in other cities with a large Black population.
Yeah.
We had drinks at Virtue after that.
Right.
Another friend from New York one time said, she's like, well, why does Chicago smell like barbecue?
Because.
In the summer, just driving on the Dan Ryan, driving in neighborhoods.
Right.
And this is a very special place. And I also feel like, and I would imagine you do too, we see the specialness, and we are active in participating and highlighting without overlooking the problems that the city faces. I feel like I'm running up against people, my contemporaries, who just are so over Chicago. And I'm not saying this is an easy place always.
I hear the same thing.
And I think that we forget how dope we are because we're constantly told that we're not, or we get caught up in a single narrative. So that kind of saddens me. And I also think that there's so much the city, like if you are, and people are busy, they have work, they have lives, children, caring, life doesn't always mean you can, go out and enjoy everything every weekend or every time something comes up. But there's so much to do.
This segment of the show, we ask her if she's aware of what her work does and what it means, and does any of that play into her creative process. I also ask her if journalists in Chicago can do a better job of local coverage. Here's more with Natalie on Randomly Selected.
That's a really good question, and I need to stop and think about how I process it. I would say one guiding force that I have had, whether it's on my first day at BEZ or I'm celebrating 15 years this month.
That's right. Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa. I remember the beginning.
So the way that I've tried to orient myself is I'm not writing about people, I'm writing for them. And so if you're listening or reading, I want you to see yourself. And even if you don't see yourself, see someone you know. And that's easier to do in public media because I think our audience is curious. And I don't have the same restraints I have if I were maybe working at another news organization. And the difference between writing for or about someone is writing about makes maybe the group you're writing about like an outsider, that it's not for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's explaining for someone else. And of course, in journalism and media, you have a broad audience. And so you don't always want to use language that someone isn't going to understand. But I think that's important to slip some of that in.
Yeah.
One really, really small example. I remember when I first started, there was something in a church and I said, amen. And my editor at the time said, no, it's amen. I was like, no, in this context, it's amen. And she said, okay. So it's about finding those moments. And then, of course, there are, bigger policy stories that go into that, too. So I think that's what I think about. I don't think about myself as, oh, I'm so-and-so. As I think I'm too wrapped up in the story and telling other people's stories. So I don't want to ever center myself.
Yeah.
Unless it's a first person story. I mean, there have been times that I have inserted myself in stories because it was applicable, but not inserting myself because it has to have a particular lens that is focused on me.
I don't want to get I hate when people say this, but I'm going to say it. I don't want to get political, but I have to ask. There's an election coming up, a municipal election in Chicago next year. And it appears that the current mayor may, although Willie Wilson's running and Alderman Ray Lopez is running, it appears that she may win because nobody else wants that job. From your perspective, how difficult is that job that Mayor Lightfoot has? And who could you think of that hasn't put their hat into that ring that might be an interesting candidate, someone that could challenge her? I'm not advocating that she gets beaten. Yes, I am. But I'm just saying, challenge her.
I don't know.
Because it appears that nobody wants that job.
It is a hard job.
Yeah.
No question. There may be some other alders who throw their hat in the ring, but a lot are not known outside of their community, and the ones who are, I don't think that this is a desire for them. You may have some activists who step up. The challenge there is fundraising, and also in my reporting, not just in Chicago, but I don't think activists always make the best elected officials.
Why not?
Because they're used to agitating.
Hard to agitate when you're already in.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a role for everybody in our system. And having activists is important in democracy. But that transition I have seen is hard because you have to compromise. And I'm not saying activists don't compromise, but you might have a smaller constituency. Mm-hmm. And when you become elected, that becomes much broader. And it's a different kind of coalition building that I think is very hard for people to transition into.
We look at the problems that Chicago has. There are many. We don't really celebrate the victories as much as we do the weird, horrible things that happen in this town, not just on the south and west sides, although it's primarily focused on more than it is anywhere else. Can we do a better job? I'm not a journalist, but can journalists in this town do a better job of covering this town, you think?
I think things have improved because we have many more outlets now. Mm-hmm. Block Club Chicago.
One of the best. Really,
Tribe.
really dope. Tribe also, yes, absolutely.
The Reader is still hanging on. And going back to what makes a healthy democracy, it's having robust news and different types of news outlets. So it's not just the hegemony of, two newspapers or TV stations. Although I will say people still get their news from television. Mm-hmm. mostly. So as much as I love working at BZ and, we get policymakers who listen, decision makers and thinkers, it's not mainstream the way television news is.
You ever thought
So,
about TV?
I did a little bit of contract work for WTTW on Chicago Tonight.
Yeah.
I would turn some audio stories into TV stories. But the 257s, nines, no, I don't think it's too short. And you just don't get to do the nuanced kind of journalism. I'm not those reporters work hard because you are feeling a bit like you have so many newscasts every day that you have to fill. And that's why they don't get to have the time to do longer pieces. If you get a 2-minute story, that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
But that said, I think that TV can be better because people's perceptions of Chicago are often shaped by crime coverage. And we see a lot of crime coverage on television news.
As we begin to wrap the show up, I asked Natalie about her experiences as a mom, especially in these current times. We talk about her future projects, and we talk about a current one, Billboard, a new play that Natalie has penned. I also ask her who she watches to stay inspired, and how does she keep her authenticity as a journalist. We wrap up this edition of Randomly Selected with Natalie Moore.
I mean, it's a lot of fun. When the girls were younger, it was great to try to expose them to different things in the city. Like, oh, let's explore a neighborhood. Like, you can be a tourist in your own city.
Right.
So let's go to Uptown and try Ethiopian food. Let's go to Argyle and walk and see the Vietnamese stores. And you found the nail depot and now you're happy. And you can try this food. And doing, it's because arts are my thing. It was always fun to take the train somewhere or to see a show and, an art exhibit. My 6-year-old is like, oh, we're going to an art party. Yay. I mean, she's so used to going to museums. I was 9 months pregnant when The South Side came out.
Right.
And 2 weeks after she was born, I was doing events and she was a little baby coming along.
Yes, she was.
So it's a little scary at times thinking about how the world seems to be burning. The 6-year-old, she just turned 6, but when she was 5, she was like, "You're talking a lot about abortion, Mommy. What's abortion?"
Whoa.
I'm not ready to have that conversation. I was able to distract her, which usually does not work because she'll be like, "No, give me an answer. Give me an answer. Give me an answer."
That's you.
I know it's going to come up again. And so I've decided I would just talk about reproductive justice as a broad theme, but I don't think abortion is appropriate. That's my, I'm not knocking anyone who does, but I'm not equipped to have that conversation yet with older girls. Yeah, that's different. But yeah, it's I like hanging out with the 6-year-old. Like, she is fun. Like, we have a good time, and she's turn up baby. She's been going to parties and events and knows how to talk to adults as well as children. Very social. If you don't speak to her, she was like, I said hello.
Oh, she did that to me once.
She did.
Yes, she did. I spoke to your husband. I was on my bike at the point. I said, "Hey, what's up, man?" And she looked at me. She was waiting. And she's like, "You're not saying hello." I was like, "Hello, I'm sorry." I felt so horrible.
Yeah.
Every time I see her, on the occasion I see her, I have to make sure that I am correct.
You have to speak.
That's right, or else. I don't want no smoke from a 6-year-old. I've learned. I would be remiss as well if I did not ask about future projects that you may have. Your success with the South Side and with the Billboard, which is that play is going to change a lot of people's opinions about things, I hope.
Well, we'll see. I mean, that's what I'm working on, trying to promote that, get people don't buy plays.
Right.
Because plays don't tend to be published as books. This is being treated as a piece of cultural work, not just the play script that's inside. So yeah, much different reception than the South Side.
Yeah.
So my focus is on promoting that, getting people to come to the play, and
A much different reception than the book about the Black Keystone Rangers.
yeah, I mean, people buy. Yes, much different, and not different meaning that people are like, oh my god. Well, I think abortion is an uncomfortable subject, no matter what your thoughts are on abortion. Yeah. So maybe I underestimated that, but also when you buy a play, you can really you can read this whole book in one sitting. So
make it happen.
Yeah,
make it happen. I didn't ask about influences for you, but I will ask about your contemporaries. Who in this world that you're in, of your contemporaries, your peers, do you watch or read or listen to?
Do you mean in journalism?
Journalism, yeah.
Well, there's so many exciting writers and thinkers who are out there. Some who have, accomplished a different stature than me, and others who are up and coming, and I think will continue to grow. But some of my influences aren't just writers. I collaborate a lot with Amanda Williams, the artist. So we joke that I'm the visual version of her and she's the writer version of me. And so it's been great. She's my friend, but we've also done numerous collaborations together. Yeah. And I think play off of each other's work really well, and both being daughters of the South Side. So I would say that's my main person right now.
Nice. I was hanging with her and her two daughters not too long ago at an event downtown, and this kind of flashy place, and her girls are just like, whatever, let's go. What are we doing?
Yeah, they hang with my 6-year-old.
Oh, well, there you go.
They're used to being dragged around too.
Remember when they were very little?
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird. Everybody's getting up there.
I know.
Yeah, except for me and you. We're staying young forever. That's the plan.
Despite all the gray hair on top of my head.
And I won't show you what's happening under this hat.
Yeah.
I have learned a lot from reading your stuff over the years and listening to you on the radio. Yeah, absolutely. You look surprised. No, I have.
Well, it's always nice to have a compliment.
well, I say that to say that I get an opportunity a lot of people don't get, to be able to talk to people who do things and to be able to say to them how people who I hang with, we all kind of vibe on what you do and what other people do. What I find, and when I hear your reporting, it is not just informative, it's authoritative. And I think the authenticity of what you do comes across so much differently than it does with other journalists in Chicago for some reason.
Okay.
Your delivery is not bossy, not preachy, authoritative. How did you develop that skill? Because you have a certain voice.
Practice. I mean, when I first started, I was mixing the breaths out of my stories.
Right.
And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to act like I'm an NPR reporter and put on that voice, and that doesn't work. The best NPR training voice that I had was we had an acting coach come in.
Really?
Yeah.
At BZ? Mm-hmm. Really?
Surprising. Right?
Really?
Yeah.
Who was it?
I forgot her name, but she was really good.
Yeah.
And that's what helped, because there is a performance nature. And even when you feel like you're being over the top, you're not. And of course, we have a different sound than WBBM. You know, we're not talking as fast. I don't think we sound as broadcasty, but I do try to match the tone of my voice and the inflection based on what the story is. And the other cool thing is that these are your words. And so if an editor changed, like, you know what, I'm having trouble saying that word, or I wouldn't say that. It's different than the written word being edited. Being edited for audio means that you have to say words that you're comfortable with. Yeah. And that would be like literally in your voice. So that helps. But yeah, the acting, I was like, oh, so there's really a method to this. And when I applied for the job, they had me come in and read, and I did it in one take. And I was like, okay, I'm like the Jay-Z of public media. I can do it in one take. That was probably a fluke. But there is an art to having the sound.
Right. I am such a fan. I have been for a long time, even before
Thank
all
you.
this BEZ stuff happened 15 years ago. The joy I get hanging and talking to you when I have the opportunity to is really cool. You've always been nice to me, and I will hope to always be able
Ditto.
to return the favor.
Ditto.
And thank you so much for being on Randomly Selected, Natalie. This was dope. I really had a good time.
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you. Everybody here wants to thank Natalie Moore so much for being on our program today. We truly appreciate it. It's more than a notion to be able to sit and talk with people that are as dope as Natalie, and this was a really good time. And thank you again for being on the show. On the next Randomly Selected, from coffee, hip hop, and mental health, we welcome in Christopher Lamarck. Please join us next time for Randomly Selected. Have a great one, y'all. Peace.